The state of the modern online game, and really specifically the online shooters, is something that's become increasingly laughable to me as time has gone on, and Rocket Arena, a recent game from EA, is only a further example of this for me. And what I mean is we're talking about games that are online only and utilize multiplayer matchmaking, where they're relying on other players being there for you to actually be able to play the game that you purchased. Now, I kind of complained about this last year when I was playing through the Division 2, which of course is a game that I played completely solo and I was able to do so I was never worried about how many people were playing Division 2. I was mostly just psyched out about the fact that, I collected a lot of awesome loot on this game. I might want to go back to it in 10 years, and if the servers are shut down, that's not going to be a possibility. And I really hated the fact that a game that I played completely solo had to have this online component. But interestingly enough, there are a slew of games, far more than the Division 2 style, that are basically just games that are multiplayer focused, like Rocket Arena, like something like, say, Black Ops 4, where they don't have a single player aspect to them, and they're being released not as free-to-play games, but as paid games. In the case of Rocket Arena, it launched for $40, and a week later it was $10, and I'm sure relatively soon it'll go free-to-play if it hasn't already by the time you saw this video, because ultimately it's going to end up being a dead game. People aren't playing Rocket Arena, and it's just another example of a game that's going to end up sputtering out almost immediately because of a lack of players. Now, of course, you could attribute that to the quality of the game. You could say EA could have done a better job marketing the game. Maybe a lot of people just weren't aware of Rocket Arena. I know I wasn't. And as an initially $40 release title, it's kind of a budget game and maybe something that would have flown under the radar. But you simply cannot have that when we're talking about a game that's relying on a multiplayer component and other people being there to play. I mean, this is even a cross-platform game. You can play with PS4, you can play with PC, and yet it took me a very long time to find other games on a free weekend when you could just download the game and just play it if you wanted to, like I did. I wanted to try it. I wasn't going to pay $10 to buy it because I didn't really see myself playing it. Didn't look super appealing to me, but I wanted to try it out at least. I just feel that this notion of multiplayer only games is something that has to change going into the next generation as more and more titles continue to compete for our attention. I mean, we see things like PUBG and Fortnite hold relatively strong player bases for a long time, and it feels like every company and even some indie developers feel like they can go out and do the same thing, but they seem to forget the fact that you need the players in order to have the game have a healthy community and for the game to grow. These games are way too dependent on the player base, and because of that, it can absolutely stagnate and kill off a game as players leave. Seems like it increases at an exponential rate, because when you're having a hard time finding a match, it really kills your desire to actually play the game when you're wasting so much time. I know Titanfall 2 is an older shooter that gets a lot of praise yet, and likely the reason why Titanfall 2 is not completely dead, even though its player base isn't anything spectacular, and you definitely can't put it up against something like Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Titanfall 2, I think, stays relevant because it mixes bots into the multiplayer to kind of fill spots and get the games filled up quicker, while also still having these ginormous matches because the bots are filling out part of a larger team. And I don't even think that's necessarily the best case scenario, because there's still a multiplayer component and it's still reliant on online connection. Rather, I think something like Black Ops 2 on the Xbox 360 is the ideal situation, though the game's player base has completely dwindled to oftentimes less than 100 players online at once, making anything but team deathmatch be virtually unplayable, and even that difficult to find a full game on. The game is still very playable because you're able to play offline with bots. That's something I think will keep Black Ops 2 alive for the future, kind of as a nostalgic game that people will go back and revisit every once in a while. I know I probably will. The reason I'll be able to do that is because of the offline functionality that it has with bots, and the fact that I'll be able to go back and kind of relive that multiplayer experience through the bots, even when there aren't other people playing it online simultaneously. So in the case of these modern games like Rocket Arena that came out, burnt out in a month or less, I just feel bad for them. Bad for the people that were excited about the game, maybe the ones that were following it pre-release. There probably weren't a lot of them, but they were probably really excited to have the opportunity to play this game. I just feel like that got stolen away from them when instead they got left with an empty game that is reliant on other players that just simply don't exist. And they're going to get stuck trying to line up games on subreddits, just to try and get the opportunity to even play the game they bought. But even more so, I'm, saddened for the people that worked on this game. I'm sure there were a lot of developers that put a lot of time and effort into this game. They really wanted to see it become something. And ultimately what EA ended up putting out was a game that died off in a month. I mean, it's almost worse than releasing a single player game, having it get a 50 on Metacritic, and then that's it. Because that game that got a 50 on Metacritic could end up being like Gotcha Force that I talked about a couple weeks ago. Maybe it becomes a cult classic down the road, or people make YouTube videos about it because it's like that motorcycle game from the Xbox 360 and it's just laughably terrible, so people talk about it years from now. It's never going to have that sort of future appeal because there's nothing for it to have a future appeal of. It's just simply dead on impact, and for that I really feel sorry for the people that put time and effort of their careers into a game that panned out to not even last as long as the development cycle did. So it's disappointing, and I wish the industry would move away from this type of practice. But thank you guys for watching. I'm Bailey, and I'll see you in the next video.